Alrighty, well, we'll go ahead and get started, and if other people roll in, cool, and if not, I'll teach the people who else can do it. So, wanted to take a minute to look over the syllabus, just because we only have about a month left of the semester. So I thought it was important to kind of do a check-in, see where we are with everything here. So, need a little arrow. We are here. Okay, so today and Monday, we're gonna cover integrity and psychological thought. We will be able to finish that Monday. So your exam will be Wednesday. I'm about halfway through writing the review sheet. Life just happened and I wasn't able to get it done last night, but I will get it done either this morning or this afternoon. It will be posted. I will send you an email announcement when it's posted so that you can use it. Basically for terms, there's the bolded terms in the book and scenarios. They give out sort of things we talk through. We'll look at it as examples together. So exam 3 will be Wednesday. It'll be the same format as exam 2. So a decent chunk of matching and then some scenarios you react to. And then after that, we're going to talk about understanding social behavior and how stuff can apply to everyday living. In the middle of that, we're going to have Thanksgiving break. That's really not that far away. It's just like a little mind-boggling. And then we'll have reflections on thinking like a scientist, and you'll have exam 4. Exam 4, I think we'll be over, a little bit less information than the previous exam. And then your project presentations are during our scheduled exam time. I think technically our scheduled exam time starts at 8 a.m., but nobody needs to be here that early, and they're not going to take that long, so we're going to start at 9. Just basically our normal class time. So that will, those are those myths or what have you that you've been working on all semester, and I've been giving you little assignments to help with. So I'm going to do 5 things at once. Let me make sure I do what I was thinking of. Alrighty. Questions about logistics of things coming up. Just as a reminder, I will take stuff late. So if you're behind on perusals or you never turn in your outline for your poster, you can still do that. The assignments are also all still posted. So if you miss any of those in class, you certainly can come here to find them. So let me just show you right quick here where you find those on Blackboard. If you go to assignments, you'll see there's links to the Google Docs for like the group discussion on sources of bias that we looked at, the bias in sources, individual assignment, and you can turn it in here as well. The APA citations and references assignment as well. So if you need to catch up on any of those, that's where you can do it. They should be. I don't know if they are. I'm super behind on grading on top of everything else, so I apologize. In addition to all the craziness, we all have the chaos I've experienced this semester in terms of sickness and whatnot. I was also turning in my application for full professor. And that was due Monday. So now I can like catch up on stuff. So this weekend I plan to start catching up on grading, like perusals. I know I haven't done them since like exam 2 or the midterms. So yeah, I will update and then you will know what you're missing essentially after that. Good question. Make sure I'm giving everybody who's on Zoom credit for being here. Okay. So today we will talk about integrity and psychological thought. I have to say, this chapter, this is just my opinion as someone who's teaching this class for the first time, I thought this chapter didn't necessarily add that much to what we've already learned. There's always a little bit of redundancy with some of the stuff we've already talked about. But I did try to find us some nice examples of things with videos so that we could illuminate it. And it's a nice way to start sort of like reconceptualizing things as we get towards the end of the semester. So. All right, so we've talked about the fact that we tend to use personal experience for things, right? And that can be problematic in a lot of ways, right? I mean, of course, our personal experiences are going to influence our beliefs, right? If we have a bad experience, I'll give you a really silly example. About Kelly, it was when we were still in quarantine, so a month plus ago. We ordered pizza from like just one of our local pizza shops instead of a chain. And it just never came. Like, first they called me like a half hour after I ordered it and they're like, oh, our printer was broken. And so now we got your order and now we'll do it. And then just literally like the pizza never came. And when I called them and I was like, where's our pizza? They were like, well, it got delivered. And I was like, sure it didn't. So some random person got my pizza. Right. And so that could have just been an off day for them, but like, we're not going to order from them again. Right? Like, it was just like a comedy of errors. Right. Or you personally experience something. And so then you think that that happens to everybody. Right. You think it's like a common experience. Kind of a cute, silly example of that is that for years and years, both of the senators from Maine were women. And one of their daughters, upon meeting a senator from another state, said, Mom, men can be senators too? Like, just the idea of like, you've only ever seen women who are senators, right? Kind of interesting and revelatory. But we know from stuff that we've talked about before that our own experiences, our own perception or interpretations of our experiences can be distorted and can be misleading as well. So we can't always trust our sensory experiences. So I have a couple fun videos about illusions to illustrate that. Again, I was just trying to think of ways.
This episode is brought to you by CuriosityStream. Okay, take a look at this optical illusion. Are the lines parallel or not? What about this one? Is the black line a continuation of the red line or the blue line? Or if it's misaligned, which direction does it have to move to be in line with the red one? These are examples of geometrical optical illusions, namely the Zollner and Poggendorff illusions. The Zollner illusion is made up of diagonal lines. They are parallel, but they're crossed with shorter lines that alternate between horizontal and vertical. The angles of these shorter lines give the impression that the diagonal lines are not parallel. In the Poggendorff illusion, we have a tendency to misestimate the unknown angles hidden by the rectangle. The acute angles have an effect of us over-predicting the position of the line. Many of us are tricked by looking at these images, and for centuries we thought that perceptual illusions just involved the visual system. But people who have been blind since birth can be tricked by these illusions too. In a classic 1938 study, an experimental psychologist mounted raised versions of the Poggendorff, Zollner and Mueller-Lyer illusions on veneer plyboard. When participants who were blind since birth touched the illusions and explored them haptically, almost all experienced the Poggendorff and Mueller-Lyer illusions, and about half were tricked by the Zollner illusion. When sighted participants only touched the illusions, there was no effect. But when the sighted participants looked at the illusions, they were tricked by them too. For people who were blind, they could feel the illusions that others see and still be tricked by them. And over time, with more participants and more accurate ways of running these experiments, researchers found that many visual illusions exist in a tactile mode. Take the Mueller-Lyer illusion. Do you think the lines are the same length, or are they different? For sighted people, some suggest this illusion prompts perceptual differences in depth, and in people who are blind, many have difficulty in separating where the straight line ends and where the arrows begin, leading to an overestimation or underestimation of the straight line. In many studies, this illusion has tricked participants who are both blind and sighted. There are perceptual processes common in both vision and touch, but there are some differences too. Take a look at this image. Are the yellow lines the same length or different? Mario Ponzo, an Italian psychologist, suggested that our minds judge an object's size based on its background. That is, when you can see an object. In numerous studies, the Ponzo illusion hasn't been found in touch in those who are blind, which means a different perceptual process is underlying the illusion. It's thought the Ponzo illusion is dependent on our impression of linear perspective, which isn't universally present in those blind since birth. Of course, people who are blind can learn about these principles of perspective, just as sighted people do. But research suggests they may not spontaneously use these cues in interpreting raised line drawings. Studying haptic perception in blind, vision impaired, and sighted people can help us better understand the sense of touch and improve the design of things like raised maps, accessible money, and even haptic feedback on our phones. And in addition to that, now you can see there's more to the humble illusion than first meets the eye.
So then they just have a sponsorship, but kind of cool. We think of illusions as only being optical, right? But in fact, they can be in all of our senses in different ways. The people who are non-sighted can experience essentially sighted ones through touch. Alrighty, there can also be auditory illusions. And some of these you might be familiar with, but some of them are kind of novel.
Many of us have become quick to catch illusions that trick our eyes, but how often do you consider illusions of the ear? Are you really able to trust your ears and the things they hear? For example, listen to Greg speaking.
Bar, 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 bar.
What do you hear? If you heard bar, 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 you'd be right. But how about now?
Bar, 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 bar.
Chances are you heard far, far, far this time with an F, except you didn't. In fact, the audio didn't even change between the two videos.
Bar, bar, bar.
Strange as it may seem, what you hear depends on which video you're looking at. Go ahead, take turns watching each video and see how the sound morphs.
Bar, bar, bar.
This is a perfect example of something called the McGurk effect, which shows how our visuals can alter what we believe.
Is that a money? The videos are different, but the sound is the same. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, it's two different videos synced to the same sound. And you interpret them differently because of, and they're going to talk about this, the fact that we use kind of lip reading, in an amateur way, when we interpret what people are saying, which is why masks make it difficult sometimes, right?
We're hearing. Now I want you to count how many times you see a circle flash on screen. Let's do that one more time. Did you see it flash twice? Many people do, yet without the sound, it becomes clear that the circle is only flashing once. In this case, the sound has altered your perceived vision. The next one works best with other people around. I'll play two tones and you tell me if they're ascending or descending. In other words, are the notes played from low to high or high to low? Listen to this. Which was it? How about this one? Write down what you heard for each number and let us know in the comments. Chances are, if you compare with enough people, you'll all have different answers. Surprising? Try some more. And this one. How is it possible that you're hearing something different from others? It's an auditory illusion called the tritone paradox. It's created in such a way that the tones contain both a higher and lower frequency in them, but our brains have a preference of which to listen to. Diana Deutsch, the creator of this illusion, found that your geography and language from infancy all play a role in deciding this preference. Finally, listen to this audio clip of a gradually climbing tune. Yet if I play the exact same clip back to you, it will sound like it's only continuing to climb higher and higher. I swear this is the exact same clip I just played. You can rewind that section of this video over and over and check for yourself. Try it. Each time you start it over, the tune is seemingly climbing even higher. It's called the Shepard tone illusion, of which there are many variations. In it, multiple sine waves are played on top of one another, raising in pitch, while one quickly drops down an octave as the others continue rising. But our brain doesn't notice this drop, and so the clips sound like they're rising forever. These illusions may help to explain how something like music can have such a profound yet varying effect on our minds, which we discuss in our New ASAP Thought episode here, along with the question of whether or not music can save your life. There's a link in the description to watch it. So, do you still trust your ears?
All right, so reactions to that. Yeah, it is really interesting, right? I mean, like, we know about some auditory perceptual things like the Doppler effect, right? Like when a fire truck goes by, it sounds like it changes in tone, but it really doesn't. Yeah, the last tone they were playing, the one that kind of cycles, is kind of a famous one. Your book talks about it. So I tried to find a clip just of that, and the only one I could find was like 5 minutes long and like ear like bleeded into things. So I saw that there was a little tiny bit in here. So I was like, I don't want to do that. So I played like 2 seconds of it. And my husband was like, "What was that?" It's okay. It's something I'm doing for class. It's fine. So yeah, I think that we are trained to think we can trust our senses, right? And most of the time we probably can, but there are things that can mess with us. Yeah. One of the things in my intro class years ago, it was like we started with a frequency that was lower and as it went up, and everybody raised their hand and when I couldn't hear it anymore, with their hands down and just the difference in ages, like maybe when you're younger, you hear a lot more than when you're older. It was freaky. Yeah, and that's really interesting. Like, for whatever reason, it tends to be gendered a little bit, but like women lose their ability to hear lower sounds and men lose their ability to hear higher sounds as you age. So, and again, I have no idea why. Like, that's just bizarre, but right, right. Right, right. Yeah, I think a lot of that's probably socialized because women are told that we need to pay more attention to fashion and color and things like that, right? Just like guys tend to be better at like mental rotation tasks or 3D tasks just because they're told like, ooh, this is something you've not, or they're given blocks or things like that. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how much like our lived experiences, our learned experiences can affect how we interpret something so simple. And I mean, we're just talking about humans, right? Debbie, what you were saying made me think of like dog whistles, right? Like there are sounds, there are sights that like other animals can see, but we can't. Like sharks can see it infrared, right? Things along those lines. So exactly. Yeah, there are so many things that like are outside of our awareness, but around us all the time. So it's sort of interesting to think about. And that's just like things outside of our perception. You can even just stop and think about like sensations in your body that you tune out all the time, right? Like if you pay attention, you can like feel yourself breathing, right? If you do this, you can feel your heart pounding, but like we just ignore those a lot of the time, right? Because if we tried to pay attention to all that all the time and the stuff going on around us, we couldn't, right? Something as simple as like your clothes and how they feel on your body. Probably as soon as I said that, you like noticed it, right? But typically we're not.
Many of us
So these are sensory, yes, right? In terms of what we're hearing or seeing, but it's also the interpretation of that sensory output, as we were just saying, right? Like each person's interpretation of it. It's going to be perceptual and cognitive, and it influences our understanding of the past and the world around us, And it also influences our future expectations or predictions, what we expect will happen in the natural world or what we expect other people will do, for example, right? Some of these other ones that they talk about are things that go beyond just senses and are getting into the realm of attention, right? So in order to sense something, or at least in order to perceive it, you have to pay attention to it, right? And this helps with things like memory, these all tie together. I always give the example of, you come home, you've had a really hard day, rather than put your keys where you always put them, right, there you go, you flop on the couch. And then in the morning, you're like, I can't find my keys, where are my keys? Right? And it's because you never paid attention to where you left them. And so, having that spot where they always go can be really helpful, or at least sort of paying attention. And this can be related for things like whether you turned off the oven, or like I have a friend who has to tell herself when she unplugs her curling iron. She's like, I'm unplugging this because otherwise she goes back and checks it a couple times because she doesn't remember if she did it or not. So this next one is about inattentional blindness or change blindness. And in particular, we're going to show original footage from a scientific study and then sort of a fun tweak on it. And I will let the videos explain
The
it.
Door Study.
This is kind of a fun little study.
This video shows a participant from a 1998 study by Daniel Simons and Daniel Levin. Watch what happens as the unsuspecting pedestrian provides directions. The young man on the left is one of the experimenters. He has approached the white-haired man and asked for directions. Watch closely as two people carrying a door pass between them, and the first experimenter is replaced by someone else. Like many of the people in this study, the pedestrian was entirely unaware that he was talking to a different person.
So because he was focused on the map, right?
Approximately 50% of the people approached in this study didn't notice when the person they were talking to was replaced by someone else. This study was among the first to demonstrate that change blindness can occur outside of the laboratory.
So this was footage from the actual original study. And it's really interesting because they actually controlled it pretty well. It's like two white guys who look pretty similar, right? But this next one, again, is like a fun take on it. And you're going to see they do some more extreme changes. And you can see how people react.
Most of us think we're pretty observant, but with a bit of mind control, I wanted to see if I could make these people take even the most obvious things for granted.
Excuse me, do you know how to get to Trinity Church from here?
Yeah. You see that church down there?
Yep, straight through there.
And then you keep going down.
Excuse me.
Sorry, which way? You see where that church is down there?
Yeah?
You stay on that, which is, I believe, Broadway.
So I don't know if y'all caught it, but the door actually is a big picture of the first half.
And then you walk down 2 or 3 blocks and Trinity Church is on the right-hand side. We're walking in that direction.
Excuse me, you don't know where Trinity Church is, do you?
Might be Wall Street and Broadway.
Okay. Well, we're down here somewhere, aren't we?
Yeah, you see Trinity Church.
Oops, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. Inside the Trinity Church, right there. Yeah. If you keep
Okay,
going that
look a
way,
little
you
more
will have Broadway,
different,
then you will
down the
have
front,
That seemed almost too easy, so later on I see how far I can take it.
Excuse me, do you know where Trinity Church is?
It's in that direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last time I switched with someone who looked a little bit like me, but where's the fun in that?
Oh, excuse me.
You know who best direct you? The other side. You see where that lady's standing?
Sure.
That's the pool. No, the lady in the gray.
The other side.
Yeah, the other side of the
But
pool.
so you don't know where it is?
Exactly what street? No, but it's in that direction.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Excuse me. Do you know where Trinity Church is from here?
Yeah, fine. Come on, I'll take you, or you want to walk now?
I'm gonna catch some other people.
Sorry, guys. Okay, listen, once you go on Broadway,
Yes.
remember the numbers are going... I could have sworn it was another guy. Once you hit the
I think
Broadway,
I
you're
know.
going down.
Right.
Yes, walk up straight
that
that
way.
way and just walk straight down. You're going to
Brilliant.
see it. It's really brown.
That's brilliant. Thanks for your
All
help.
right, fine. Don't worry about it.
Excuse me. Do you know where Trinity Church is? Ah, great. Where are we on here? We sort of there.
We're right here.
Right through, thank you.
Go on. We are Brooklyn Bridge. You want to cross over there, go down Broadway, and you'll be right there. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me, mate. Do you know this?
To be honest, part of that could have just been because they were in New York. For that one, New Yorkers are just like, whatever.
area? Do you know the area? Do you know Piccadilly Circus?
Oh, you go the way.
So through there?
Yeah, through the through Leicester Square.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go on for me. Where?
If you keep going that way,
This way.
you get to Piccadilly Circus.
Oh, thank you very much.
problem. Good
Oh,
luck.
careful of the car. Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Excuse me, are you familiar with this area?
No.
No? Okay, all right.
What are you trying to look at?
Piccadilly Circus?
Piccadilly Circus. Cousin
Yeah.
Bob, you here. Piccadilly Circus is
Oh,
right
sorry,
here.
hang on, sorry.
Sorry, which...
I just saw it right here.
Okay, so is that straight over?
Definitely not that way. Piccadilly Circus is, I know it's that direction.
Over that way. Okay, thank you.
And like the older lady got it in that one because she wasn't looking down at the map, right? So was kind of paying more attention.
Do you know this area at all?
A little bit.
Do you know how to get to St Paul's from here? I'm not even quite sure where we are.
Still we are.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, can you just trying to work out where I'm going?
We are here.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I think it's sort of down there.
I'm sure that wouldn't have worked quite as well if I was a very famous pop star. Well, it took me over 2 hours to find Francesco's keys, which was disappointing, but I did go to Venice for free, and I didn't fall into the canal on the way home like a twat. Sorry, can I tell you how to get to St Paul's from here?
Yeah, you're well cut.
Ah, okay. Is it
Go
correct?
through to here.
Do you know where we are on here?
And then-
Sorry.
Which direction do we go?
Hang on, just get my bearings. Bristol Street, right, okay, we are...
Is that down in this direction there?
Yeah, that road there is Old Broad Street.
So again, like, can be dramatically different. And if they're really focused on that map, right, then they're gonna not notice because our brains aren't wired. We're not looking for that, right? We don't expect someone to change bodies in the middle of helping them, right? Like, it's not an everyday occurrence.
The Door Study.
Most of us think we're pretty observant.
Then a little bit more about this. So some of you may have heard of the famous study about inattentional blindness before. I often show the original video of basketball passes, but I think it's almost more fun to watch this guy kind of get other people involved in it. So we'll just watch this one here.
Most of the time, our vision does a wonderful job, but there's a limit to how much our brains can cope with. So we just pay attention to one thing at a time. and we're blind to the rest.
The brain has a huge amount of information being delivered to it by the eyes. It has to make a decision. It has to decide where to place its attention, what information it should scrutinise, what information it should ignore.
To test just how much we ignore, we've asked Richard Wiseman and the London Towers basketball team to try out an experiment designed by scientists at Harvard University. The idea is simple but silly. We film the team practicing, and then this happens. Surely no one would miss that. We get a group of people together, and Richard briefs them to watch the screen without letting on what they're being tested for.
So this is an experiment. It's a battle of the sexes, men against women. There'll be a difference, but I'm not going to say which way round it's going to be. And it's just a simple observation test. All you need to do
And this is an example of deception, because there's not a gender difference in this. He's just trying to set it up so people are like really motivated to pay attention.
You'll see there are 3 guys in yellow here, and they have a basketball. And it's your job to count the number of times they throw the basketball to each other. Now, to make things slightly harder, there's also 3 guys in blue tracksuits. But you ignore them, ignore their basketball, and just concentrate on this one. So if we can run the tape. OK, so that's number 1.
Crucially, the volunteers are told to count how many times the yellow team passes the ball. But will that be enough to make them miss the gorilla? So did they see anything?
OK, if we can stop the tape there for the moment. So how many basketball throws? 20? Any more others? 21? OK. OK, be honest here. Anybody notice anything a little bit unusual? Be honest. OK, it's just about 4 or 5 of you. Excellent. The rest of you not notice anything strange, honest? OK. Right. For you guys, enjoy this moment. When the first time I saw this, it completely threw me. Now I want you to watch the tape again, but this time just watch it as you would a normal piece of television. No counting the basketball, anything like that. If we can have the tape.
Time to show them what they missed.
Here it comes.
No way. That didn't happen.
Because they were all concentrating on counting, their brains just didn't register the gorilla.
I'm absolutely shocked. I can't believe it. I was so proud of myself as well because I got all 20. And I was so busy concentrating on it that I didn't know.
Kind of embarrassed. I thought I'd spot a monkey walking across the middle of the screen.
I was completely astounded. It was just kind of like when he did the kind of like that, I was just absolutely amazed. I was gobsmacked, I'd say. It's kind of, I can't believe, and saying they might have probably switched the video or something like that. I can't believe that you could miss something.
And then the last one is just another silly example of change blindness. So, and this is a student-created video, so it's not the most high-tech ever. So in this case, what they did is they had students come in to do a study. They had them do a little survey, and then they bent down to get the cupcake, and the different person stood up. But I love that, like, this guy's laughing in the background, and like they're still not noticing anything else. So, like, again, they just do this over and over. But again, similarly, we're not expecting the person who goes to get our cupcake suddenly to be different, right? So that's another classic study. All right, so your book always likes to offer antidotes to these things. So what are the antidotes to overcoming our literal senses tricking us, or our attention tricking us, right? So they talk about expectations and also recognizing we can't multitask. So when an event seems to defy even our wildest expectations, we should take a step back and ask ourselves, what other explanations could exist. So they talk about inference to the best explanation. So trying to find a hypothesis that represents the simplest and most plausible explanation for a phenomenon. This is essentially a takeoff Occam's razor, which is that the simplest solution is often the best, right? Same thing, the simplest explanation is often the correct one. So we can evaluate the hypotheses or speculations before accepting the truth, right? And there are times when we don't want to, and that's okay, right? So like they're using the example of going to see a magician. If you're going to see a magician or you're going to see a hypnotist, like you know in your mind, this stuff's not real, right? But like you're willfully suspending belief to just like for the pure entertainment value, right? And that's fine, right? You're not needing to be scientific in that moment. And then people are just not good at multitasking, and no matter how much the business world, right, or like the media try to tell us, like this type of person is better at multitasking than this person. No one's good at multitasking. I mean, for the reason that like the selective attention stuff just showed us, right? If we're counting passes, we don't even see the gorilla, right? And so we should essentially like reduce our risk by not multitasking, not texting and driving, things along those lines, right? Because those create sometimes just attentional blindness where like even if we're holding our phone here, we just might not see other stuff going on, right? Or sometimes just like you're looking down so you literally don't see what's around you, right? So just knowing when we need to be giving something our whole attention, like in potentially life or death situations, which is actually every moment you're driving a car, right? Like cars are kind of giant weapons that we drive around. Okay, and then they talked about patternicity, or I think it's pareidolia, I don't actually know. This is our human tendency to patterns or meaning and ambiguous or meaningless stimuli. So I have a cutesy video I'm going to show you for some examples of this. Let me show the cutesy video first, and then I'll talk about the next part. We will watch this real quick. Like 10 minutes of it. Let's just get the nice example. Something as simple as being in a cloud, right? Yeah, this is there are like whole sections of people dedicated papers on that. Right? I had to get a little bit through, right? You'll hear these people who are like, I told Jesus on my phone. So again, if like you really are into that, feel free to just go watch like a soothing 12 minutes of that later. It might be a nice relaxation, right? So like that's fun, right? And that's fine, and there's nothing damaging or unhappy about that. Where this starts to get problematic is when people are interpreting patterns in their lives, right? So if people, and again, like something like reading your horoscope doesn't have to be harmful, right? But if you're going out and actively changing your life in potentially not well thought out ways because of what your horoscope says, right? And interpreting ambiguous stimuli to mean your horoscope is right, right? It could lead to you you know, giving up money that you don't need to be doing, putting yourself in potentially dangerous situations, right? So they talk about perspective taking, which is trying to imagine things from another person's point of view, right? So looking at things from the outside in rather than we as humans, like it's just adaptive. We tend to just think of things from our own perspective most of the time. So it doesn't only open the mind of the perspective taker, but if we communicate that to the person that we're trying to put ourselves in their shoes, it can actually help them to open up their mind as well. This is also called empathy. This is also sometimes called theory of mind. And it is an ability that most people can have, but there are certain people with certain, in particular, psychological disorders that struggle with this. People with schizophrenia have a really hard time with perspective taking, for example, partially because like their lives are just dominated by these symptoms they're experiencing. People on the autism spectrum also have a hard time with this. And it's, you know, something to do with how their brains are wired, right? And this is honestly the main reason why people on the autism spectrum have trouble interacting socially, because they don't understand why other people are reacting certain ways. It's really interesting. Again, like I get weird tangential Twitter people because I'm at like psych Twitter, therapy Twitter, med Twitter. And I saw some folks who were on the spectrum talking about like a test they had to take as kids, and this is one of the tests they'll do to sort of test for it, where they show you like essentially like a picture book without words, and they ask the kids to describe like what's going on or what's on the page. And most kids will like come up with a little story for what's going on, and kids on the spectrum will just describe what's on the page. Like there's a frog, it's sitting on a log, that type of thing. And they were like, what? We were supposed to tell a story? Why didn't they just tell us that? Right? And so there's like part of this of like, it can probably be trained, right? And in fact, some of the therapies for autism spectrum disorders focus on essentially learning to recognize these types of social cues. But, you know, again, it's something most people can do. And as this points out, people from collectivistic cultures find this even easier. So we in America live in an individualistic culture. We tend to see ourselves as separate from other people. We tend to see our accomplishments as due to our own hard work. People in collectivist cultures, and these tend to be places in Asia, and some like South America, Africa, they see themselves as just part of a larger unit. They might define themselves not by individual descriptors, but by how they would describe their family or their community. And so the example story I always tell about this is my father actually used to go to Japan for work and collaborate with some folks there. And so one time they stayed really late to finish up a presentation that my dad gave the next day. And when he finished, he said, oh, and I just want to thank so-and-so for staying late. And the guy was like really upset. And they explained to him, like, we don't do that in our culture. Like what he did is just a representation of what all of us do. And that's really foreign to most of us in this room, right? But that's how they think of things. And so having that perspective makes it much easier to have that empathy, right? Alrighty, you know what? This slide is going to take more than the 6 minutes we have left. We're going to start digging into some really big things here. So why don't we just give you all 6 minutes of extra time today? Start your weekend a little early for those who don't have class after this. Enjoy your weekend. I think the weather's going to be pretty, even though it'll be cold.